And welcome back to Leadership Trailblazers. Today, I want to talk about something that I'm hearing more and more about from my coachees. It's a quiet worry, and often not discussed openly within organisations, but I know that it's creating anxiety in a lot of the senior leaders that I coach at the moment. And that is the anxiety about burning out. And again, burnout doesn't come all at once. It doesn't come suddenly. It starts quietly. It starts with the exhaustion that doesn't lift after a good night's sleep or after the weekend. It starts with a feeling of detachment about work that you used to care about, a lack of enjoyment around things that used to really energise you. These are the quiet symptoms that people start to experience, and it creates some anxiety, but often people don't recognise that they've been operating on empty for a long time, and they're not quite sure when it happened. Also, leaders can feel that burnout is a personal failure. It isn't a personal failure. It is actually something that needs to be managed. Your stress levels need to be managed to avoid burnout, but it's not a personal failure, because often it comes from the fact that you do care deeply, that you're good at pushing through, that you're actually really good at delivery, and you're incredibly committed. So not a personal failure, but something that you need to be very aware of and manage well. So what is burnout? The World Health Organization defined it as chronic workplace stress not successfully managed. And it has three characteristics: exhaustion, as I mentioned earlier, detachment, and reduced efficacy. So that feeling that you're not quite on your game, that you're not quite as good as you used to be. And notice this is chronic stress, not acute stress. Not the stress that comes from a big project that's got to be delivered to a really tight deadline. That's acute stress, but it has a finishing line. Chronic stress is something that many senior leaders have been living with for years. It's ongoing, it's relentless, and there is no finish line. And what happens then is that you're constantly living with raised levels of cortisol, which is the hormone that's released when stress is present. And that leads to a cognitive decline, less empathy, less creativity, and that feeling of being flat, not enjoying things that you used to enjoy, not feeling energized, and withdrawing and becoming detached from your sense of purpose and your work. And senior leaders are particularly vulnerable to burnout because the very qualities that got you to your position make you most vulnerable. Many people in senior leadership roles are really good at pushing through. They're really good because they care, they're committed, they don't want to let people down. And so they just keep going. And they don't create natural boundaries, and work is never finished. If this resonates, then this episode is definitely for you. I was coaching a director in healthcare, let's call her Rachel. Externally, she was flying, but she was running on empty internally. When she came to me, she said, I just don't feel anything anymore. I feel completely emotionally flat. I know how to keep going. I'm really good at that. But inside, I just feel that there's no point. She'd been feeling like this. It had been building for 18 months. And she didn't actually have to wait that long. And neither do you. So what's the first tip? Recognize the early warning signals. As I said, burnout builds gradually and it sends signals early. It's just that leaders are really good at overriding them. The signals are sleep disruption, your enjoyment narrowing, feeling more irritable, physical tension can manifest in headaches, tension in your shoulders. I'm sure people can recognize that, and disconnection from your sense of purpose, and sadly, from the people that you love and from your friends. Treat these signals as data, not catastrophe, because if you spot them early, you can do something about them. As I said before, Rachel's first signals started to appear 2 years before she came to coaching. And as I said before, she didn't have to wait that long. If you think this would benefit you, you can get access to my leadership resilience audit. This is a free self-assessment tool, and you can assess yourself over 7 pillars of resilience. This will show you where you've got high levels and where you've got gaps. And the download link will be in the show notes. It's completely free. And once you've completed it, please reach out to me to have a chat about your results. Second tip, treat energy as a strategic resource. This is one of the things that I do a lot of work with the people who are on my Leading with Resilience programs, energy management. And leaders often obsessively manage time, but they don't necessarily manage their energy. Time is fixed. We have a certain amount of hours in the day. Energy is renewable, but only if you actively renew it. And this can be different for different people. For some people, it's physical exercise. For some people, it's spending time in nature. For others, it might be putting in some kind of creative hobby. I worked with somebody, worked with her for several years. She was incredibly good at protecting the time to do some of the things that actively restored her. So one of the things she loved to do was wild swimming. And even though she worked in the middle of London, she managed to build in time in her working day to go and do some swimming. She had to be very organised about it, but she managed it. Another of the people I coach makes jewellery, and that's one of her creative outlets. And it's something that really renews and restores her. So it's different for different people, but you've got to find what actually demonstrably works for you and protect it like a board meeting. One of the other things that can really drain your energy is unresolved tensions. So the difficult conversation you've been avoiding, maybe the performance issue that you're not quite sure what to do with, the board meeting that keeps coming back to the same topic and you know that you need to move them on, but you haven't done yet. Doing the difficult thing clears your brain, because when you've got that difficult thing hanging over you, it really does drain your energy. And doing it almost always costs less than avoiding it. So if you know you've got something that's unresolved, really think about, I need to do that. And I need to get it out of my brain and make sure I've got closure on that. Third tip, redefine sustainable leadership. Many leaders head for burnout because they're leading from a model that they never consciously chose. It might have been something that they picked up in early stages of their career. It might come from some very old beliefs that they even picked up when they were growing up. Sustainable leadership actually comes from leading from a model that you consciously choose. So you need to think about, what kind of model am I leading from, and is it sustainable? 3 aspects of sustainable leadership are real delegation, not anxious or partial delegation, real delegation, where you set the boundaries clearly, you set expectations, you have good conversations that ensure that people know exactly what's expected of them and what support they can ask for if they need it. And then you let them do it. You let it go. Second one is boundaries. I talk about boundaries so much. In a previous episode, we talked about the art of saying no. If you are too available, if you don't set boundaries in place, then you cannot manage your energy. So actually establishing and protecting your boundaries is really, really important. And it's a leadership skill that is very much underrated. So think about your boundaries. And then, as I said previously, having honest conversations, even if they feel difficult, having those honest conversations, and also having honest conversations about your own and others' capacity. Because again, if we think about your teams, if you do this well as the leader, your teams know that they can do it too. Because leaders that burn out often have teams that are heading for burnout as well. And they don't do that intentionally, but they're role modeling, this is how we have to do it. And so their teams start to push through. They start to let their boundaries go. They start to overdo it. So it's important that you do it for you, but it's important that you do it for your team as well. An always-on culture is contagious. So making sure that people understand that they don't always have to be on is so, so important. And performance improves. I think you know it, but sometimes it's difficult to feel it. And sometimes it's very challenging to put those practical things in place that will make the difference. But you will be so grateful, both for yourself and for others, that you did. So coming back to Rachel, she did 3 quite simple things at the beginning. She booked her holidays 12 months in advance, which she'd never done before, and she made them immovable. She gave one piece of work, which was a big piece of work that she'd taken on almost unconsciously, but it didn't really belong to her. It belonged to a different director, and she gave it back. They sat down, they did a proper handover, but she gave it back. So she was no longer doing that piece of work, and that had been quietly draining her over time. And she set in place work-free Saturdays. And over 3 months, those 3 quite simple things, but I know that as people are listening to this, they're probably thinking, yeah, simple but not easy. Simple but not easy things, but they really made a difference. And she started to feel like her old self again. So remember, burnout is a signal, not a verdict. Remember to look at the early signals. You can get that audit free of charge, and you can do an audit now to see if you've got any of the early warning signals. Treat your energy as a strategic resource, because it is, and redefine sustainable leadership. If this hits close to home, come and find me at loisburtononline.com or on LinkedIn, and please share this one with anybody you think will benefit. This is Leadership Trailblazers. Remember, the way we led yesterday will not lead us into tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.